Sorry about the rain. I guess it's good that Judge Del Ricci said no press conferences on the stairs, so we're here. It's been a long journey to get here, and today justice was served. It's been a long time coming, but it arrived when a convicted felon named William H. Cosby, Jr. left the courtroom in handcuffs, headed off to state prison for his crimes. It's been a long wait for our victim, Andrea Constand, as it has for the other women who have endured similar sexual assaults and rapes at the hands of the defendant. It has also been a long road for our prosecution team, which has worked hard to get justice for Andrea Constand, overcoming every legal hurdle that was thrown at us and a succession of defense attorneys along the way. For decades, the defendant has been able to hide his true self and hide his crimes using his fame and fortune. He's hidden behind a character created, Dr. Cliff Huxtable. It was a seminal character on TV, and so was the family, but it was fiction. Before Bill Cosby became a convicted felon, taken away in handcuffs to begin paying for his crimes, a lot of people believed that that's who he was, but we know otherwise. He used his acting skills and that endearing TV personality to win over his victims and then keep them silent about what he did to them. So now finally, Bill Cosby has been unmasked, and we have seen the real man as he is headed off to prison. So throughout this investigation and prosecution, we have treated the defendant like any other defendant. Our office prosecutes approximately 9,500 cases a year, and as prosecutors, it's our job to follow the evidence wherever it leads and to whomever it leaves and file charges accordingly, and then follow through on the prosecution of those crimes. That's what we do every day. We do the right thing, and that's what we did in this case. We do the right thing because someone who has a lot of money, someone who is famous, someone who can get a lot of attention all over the world just by showing up someplace to eat, shouldn't be given a pass for their crimes and allowed to walk free because he and his defense team are going to make it hard to prosecute him, or because it will be expensive to prosecute him. Every victim deserves justice. Once that jury said guilty, and then said guilty, and then said guilty to all three charges of aggravated indecent assault, the sentencing guidelines indicated that the defendant should go to prison. We argued for the stiffest sentence to reflect that egregious natures of the crime. Giving women drugs so he can then have no resistance. It is a very serious crime, and the judge spoke of that today. Doesn't matter that he is only now being prosecuted and called to account for those crimes. In the eyes of this court, he's a convicted felon and shouldn't be given a pass. So I'm pleased that Judge O'Neill followed the sentencing guidelines, handed down a fair and significant sentence that reflects the severity of Cosby's crimes and the lifelong impact on Andrea. So let me talk about Andrea for a moment here. I can't say enough about her. We are all better off because she is in our lives. You've heard about how this assault changed her life. She has been through an ordeal these past 14 years, and she has been solid and steadfast. To put herself out like this for years in front of a worldwide audience is extremely difficult for anyone. She's been a rock. She's done the right thing over and over and over again. She went to the police and started this investigation. She told us she would cooperate with the prosecution long after she thought this ordeal had been put behind her. And she could have stayed home in Canada, and she could have lived a quiet life. But she knew it was important to see that justice was served. And we had some time when we were waiting for the jury the first time around. And So some of you know I coach a little basketball, so I was trying to get tips from Andrea on this. It's not every day that I get to be around a person of this caliber of talent in the basketball arena. And when we had a pretty good indication of where that jury was going, I went to her and asked her what she wanted to do. Sticking with the basketball aspect. She did one of these and said always follow through, and she did, and it has led us to where we are today. She agreed to seek justice after that first trial ended, and we knew what we were going to go through again, and she never wavered. So we reached justice. We got to hear from the jury guilty verdicts, and right there, standing with Andrea and her family, were the other courageous victims. I'm overwhelmed by the number of women who are willing to go through this process with us, who are willing to testify at trial, telling their stories about being drugged and sexually assaulted or raped by Bill Cosby. I especially applaud the 6 witnesses who did have a chance to face the defendant in court and tell the jury and the world what happened to them. The courage of Kelly Johnson, Heidi Thomas, Shalon Lasha, Janice Dickinson, Janice Baker Kinney, and Lisa Lott Lublin was tremendous. They also endured significant victim shaming, which should never happen in a courtroom, but anybody that was there saw it. And I hope this trial and seeing the defendant brought to justice helped each of them and all of the other victims heal in their own way. And I want to also thank her attorneys, Dolores Triani and B.B. Kivitz, who were with her every step of the way with this, as well as this prosecution team. And it was nice to have Thunder and Lightning back with me here, and Stu Ryan and Kristen Fedden are consummate professionals, and have been with me the whole way, and I can't say how appreciative I am of that, and also their talents, which you again got to see in court when Stu had another chance at an expert there. Our appellate unit, and you got to meet Tracy in this case when she argued the constitutionality of it, and did a marvelous job, and we're so happy that she's part of our team. Caroline Goldstein next to her. Caroline has been the quiet one behind us, helping us each step of the way, and working diligently to all hours. Adrian Jappy next to her, the assistant chief for our appellate unit, and Bob Fallon, who's our chief of appeals. These folks, when all this stuff keeps hitting and these motions keep coming, they're the reason we're so prepared each and every day to face any challenge that came before us. There's also a number of the victim advocates, and these folks are there every day to support the victims and do so much to help them walk this walk. Our detective bureau, they're amazing, and they work and they work and they work and helped us to get through every one of those challenges. Chief Fry is here behind BB. The Cheltenham Police Department is an exceptional police department. It is led by an exceptional man. He's following in the shoes of John Norris, who we also owe a debt of gratitude to, but these folks are the best, and our law enforcement community is an amazing group of people. So there's been a lot of talk about this case and connecting it to movements across the country, and I understand that there's a larger societal context of this case that may have been helped to be advanced, the rights of victims to come forward, the lengthening of statute of limitations, or empowering people to come forward and report to law enforcement that they have been a victim of crime. All good outcomes. But I have to say that since we first charged the defendant on December 30th of 2016, this defendant has been treated like every other defendant that our office prosecutes, and there's about 9,500 of them a year, as I said, the adult cases. We followed our standard practice, and we kept our eye on the ball. And what was important was that getting justice for the victim in this case, Andrea Constand. And so I stand before all of you pleased that we have done that, pleased that the defendant was convicted, pleased that he was finally sentenced in a court of law, and that we've closed the book on that chapter. So before we wrap up and take questions, and I think Bibi asked to say a couple words, I wanted to share with you that Jennifer Storm, who is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's victim advocate, has been in touch with the many other victims, and the ones that have come forward here to say that they too were victims of this defendant. And as you know, Pennsylvania law limits the other victim's role in the sentencing hearing that we just went through, but it is important that they have a voice. It's important that they be allowed to tell the stories of what happened to them for their own healing. So Jen has organized a press event, and she's going to give everybody time between now and when that starts in a short while over at Xavier Hall, 410 East Erie Street here in Norristown. It's just a few blocks away, so that the many other victims will be there. And it's my understanding many of them would like to speak at that point. And so I'd encourage anybody to go over to them. Bibi, you asked to say something, and then I'll take questions.
I requested 30 seconds because I wasn't fortunate enough to be here for the verdict. We just wanted to extend our heartfelt thanks to the prosecution team, Kevin Steele, Kristen Fedden, Stu Ryan, the detectives, everyone who has worked on this case has just been so wonderful. Dolores and I are ex-prosecutors, so we recognize brilliance in them. And this team was not only compassionate to the victim, but they were also so tenacious in their preparation of the case. Just a marvelous job, and we're so appreciative. I have to say one word about Andrea. We have represented Andrea now for almost 14 years. She is an incredible person. She has gone through this process and the many processes with both courage and grace. And she's just a marvelous person, and we've been fortunate to represent her. The final thing I wanted to say is, for us, we get to close this chapter of our book, a fictional book, but we get to close it today. For other victims, they're just now beginning to write their own books, and hopefully they will feel safer and more free to do so. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, from my purse. All right, we'll take questions. Yes, sir.
David Spot, CBS 3. Will Ms. Constand be speaking at all today? I just want to know how you feel today now that this is finally here.
No. Thanks.
Yes, let's ask. What do you think was critical at getting the conviction? It's been 34 months. We had a mistrial in the first trial. We were able to be successful in the second trial. Looking back now, what do you think was critical at getting the conviction of Mr. Cosby?
Well, there's so many aspects of the evidence that we had that we felt was very strong. Of course, his own words, which basically spelled out what he did, and the jury heard that. And I think another aspect that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about is Dr. Ziv, and the better understanding of victims and what they go through, that she was able to tell the jury and discuss with them, and I don't know whether that had an impact on the jury or not, but we felt that it was powerful evidence to have in the case. So there's a number of things in this case that were very, very strong and continue to be strong, and I'm confident on where we are on the case.
How would you characterize seeing Mr. Cosby in handcuffs? I know you left the courtroom but you might have seen pictures. I mean, it was pretty significant seeing him walk out of court in handcuffs. What does that all mean?
Look, it's not a cause for celebration, and we take very seriously the taking of somebody's liberty. But I will not apologize for our job, and our job is to separate the predators from the good people in our community, and that happened today. And that happened when he was escorted out of the courtroom by the sheriffs in handcuffs. Next. Everybody's too hot, and so you have no other questions?
If I can, if nobody else wants to take it, if I can.
Okay.
I work for an African-American radio station. There have been many in the African-American community who felt that this was an unjust prosecution. How do you respond to that you have put an icon in the eyes of many African-Americans in jail?
This is no different from any other case and any other defendant that prosecutes. We simply follow the evidence where it takes us, and it doesn't matter who they are. And I think that's really important, because if somebody's wealth or fame or who they were detractors from following that evidence, then justice wouldn't be getting done in cases. It's been an interesting start to a time as district attorney here. I had to prosecute the chief law enforcement officer in the state, the attorney general, and we didn't hear that during this. We prosecute where the evidence takes us, and that was done in this case. And when Judge Rubino released the deposition and said that this is perhaps criminal, we're obligated to look at that, and we did, and we worked through the case, and we got to where we are today. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. Of course, they've already started their appeal process, and just wanted to give you a chance to address what they're saying about the tape being doctored, and whether or not you want to comment on that.
I will. I'll just say I'm very confident in the place we are. If that's what they've got, it's beyond a Hail Mary, which I said in court. And this is nothing new. Maybe it's new for these defense attorneys, but this was something that got discussed back in 2006 and was part of the deposition that it's not a full tape, because she turned it on. The tape with Gianna Constand taped. You heard it in court.
Okay.
And I think everybody recognizes that it didn't start at the beginning, because she had to turn on. And anybody that was there and saw it saw the microcassette that she used to do that. So if that's where they are and that's where we're going, I'm confident on where we are.
Could you go through the process of what happens to Mr. Cosby now, where he goes, how long he'll stay there,
Sure.
and then where he goes next?
Sure. Today, he got escorted from the courtroom. He starts at the Montgomery County Correctional Facility. That's in Eagleville. From there, he goes to actually a new state correctional institution called Phoenix, which was Graterford before, which is also in our county. And then he'll be there and get designated, I believe, from there to one of the state institutions throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And our Department of Corrections does a terrific job with things, and they'll look at safety issues, and they'll look at needs and act accordingly.
You asked for 5 years, between 5 and 10. The judge gave you 3 to 10. A little lower than you wanted, but I guess overall you're happy with the verdict.
So the judge, I believe, considered the guidelines, and that guideline was at the top end of the standard range. On the front end of the case, I think it's very important to note the tail end of the case. So he sentenced him to a maximum term on the tail end, which is 10 years. And that's important in that, after 3 years of incarceration, somebody would be eligible for parole. But victims get a say in that now. And that has come, over time, and they get a say. And so this is going to be a process that goes through, but he could serve every day of 10 years at this point, and that's the sentence that he was given.
How much money do you want to get back? They had talked about the cost of prosecution. I know at one point it was like $250,000 for one. So how much total money are you asking for Cosby to pay back to the county?
So I guess there's different entities through this. So you have the court costs, and that will be put in by the court. Sheriffs can put their costs in. We put the costs for the witness travel and the hotels and the expert fees, which amounted to about $43,000. And so we asked that be recouped by our office. So, and that was signed by the judge today, and I'm not sure how the rest of those will be handled, but there's different costs that come with it, and he also got a fine, and the judge gave him a maximum fine. Maybe that's not a big deal to most folks, but $25,000 was a maximum fine in the case. Anybody else?
Mr. Steele, I'm wondering, what actually is the legal process? I'm Dominic Patton, Deadline Hollywood. Obviously, they're going to appeal, so where does this go now, and what is the involvement of your office in this going forward? Because they've already started talking about the state Supreme Court.
We got a little ways to get to before we get to the state Supreme Court. So they have an opportunity to file post-trial motions. They don't have to do that. And then after that, they'll file an appeal to the Superior Court, and that's going to be handled by our office.